Robert Falcon Scott leads a party of 5 people. Their mission is to be the first people to reach the South Pole and claim it as a victory for Great Britain. 9 years prior, Scott had attempted to get to the pole, but harsh weather forced him to turn back only a few hundred kilometres from the destination. The small troop set up camp on the beach of McMurdo and waited for the Antarctic winter to pass. During the day, they undertook scientific experiments. At night, they listened to music or watched picture slideshows. On the other side of the world, Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen is sailing for the North Pole, hoping to be the first person to reach it. However, he is informed on the way that an American, Robert Peary, had already got there first. Without telling anyone, Amundsen changes course and sails south instead, hoping to get to the South Pole first. Back at McMurdo, Scott receives a telegram from Amundsen. Scott knows that this has initiated a race to the South Pole. Scott and his team finally decide to leave for the South Pole, unaware that Amundsen already left 12 days prior. Amundsen is already at the Transantarctic Mountains, the halfway point of the journey. Lucky for Scott is that a blizzard is about to whip up, delaying the Norwegians for several days, while he has time to catch up. With the blizzard gone, Amundsen and his team walk across the vast expansive Antarctic plateau. Amundsen has brought with him 45 sleigh dogs, who do most of the work. Scott, on the other hand, is travelling by ski. It would not be until January of 1912 when Scott's team reaches this point of the mission. Amundsen's team stand at the South Pole. According to his sextant, they are the first to arrive. The team pitch a tent, plant a Norwegian flag, and leave a note for Scott when he arrives.
Dear Captain Scott, as you are probably the first to reach this area after us, I will ask you to kindly forward this letter to King Haakon VII. If you can use any of the articles left in the tent, please do not hesitate to do so. The sledge left outside may be of use to you. With kind regards, I wish you a safe return. Yours truly, Roald Amundsen.
6 weeks later, Amundsen and his team would return to base camp feeling very well. Their 2.5 thousand kilometre journey took them nearly 100 days to complete. After crossing a particularly dangerous glacier, Scott and his team finally crossed the Transantarctic Mountains. Their spirits are still high, as now it is smooth sailing and they don't know that Amundsen is already back home. Scott picks 4 trusty companions to continue the rest of the journey with: Edgar Evans, Lawrence Oates, Henry Bowers, and Dr. Edward Wilson. The team ploughs on through temperatures reaching minus 40 degrees Celsius, and it gets worse when their spirits are destroyed by realising the Norwegians have beat them to the South Pole after they find an abandoned camp a few miles from the pole. Scott writes in the mission log, "The worst has happened, or nearly the worst. The Norwegians have forestalled us, and they are the first to the pole. It is a terrible disappointment." 2 days later, Scott would reach the pole and write again, "Great God, this is an awful place." Scott and his team trudge back home. They lose their way. Their food run out, and Edgar Evans dies after falling down a crevice. Lawrence Oates, previously a soldier in the Boer Wars, becomes injured, and it is made worse by an old war injury to his leg. One dark night, he stands up in the tent and says, "I am just going outside, and I may be some time." He leaves the tent and is never seen again. 3 explorers remain: Scott, Wilson, and Bowers. They're only 18 kilometres from the next supply depot, but a blizzard forces them to stay put. On his last diary entry, dated the 29th of March 1912, Scott writes, "Every day we have been ready to start out for the depot, but outside it remains a scene of whirling drift. I do not think we can hope for any better things now. We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more." In the spring, a search party is formed to find Scott and his team. They find a snow-covered tent with 3 frozen bodies inside. The search party bury the tent in snow and leave a cross made from skis on top. So why did Scott lose? Scott and his team used skis, which are man-powered and quite slow. They had originally brought Siberian horses, but even these horses were too poorly equipped to be in Antarctica. Eventually Scott had the horses shot and told the men to pull the equipment, which he thought was more manly. Amundsen, on the other hand, used sleigh dogs. They are fast, strong, and bred to survive cold weather. They could pull the team 100 kilometers a day without rest. Amundsen, having organised this expedition on an impulsive decision, did not have any waypoints set out on the route which would supply them with food, unlike Scott. However, he did not need this as he had brought dogs. Lack of fresh meat can give you scurvy, a vitamin C deficiency. What's fresher than a dog killed several hours previously? Yes, Amundsen killed and ate his own dogs for food. Half of the dogs did not even make it to the South Pole. Scott, on the other hand, was eating almost exclusively frozen meat with lard and porridge. Occasionally, the Brits would kill and eat penguins found along the way, but this was few and far between. Scott and his team wore cotton clothing. This does not dry quickly, nor does it allow sweat to escape. Amundsen's team wore wolfskin clothing, a tactic he had picked up from the Inuit people in Canada. Wolves do not need clothes, their fur is sufficient. This kept the Norwegians nice and warm, and also dry, because the fur is hydrophobic, meaning that it pushes water away more easily. Scott was a man of science. He wanted to study the South Pole as well as reach it. He took with him scientists and other typically indoor professions to hike across the Antarctic. He had these men haul crates of rock samples for studying back home, which only made the missions harder. Amundsen had always wanted to be an explorer. He had no interest in science, he just wanted to be the first person to reach the South Pole. His team consisted of dog handlers and skiing champions. He didn't need to take scientific equipment or rock samples or anything like that. Scott's mission was not completely a waste, however, as the rocks he forced his comrades to pull led to the discovery that, long ago, Antarctica was once a lot warmer than it is now. Later studies of Antarctic weather and calculations recovered from Scott's diaries revealed that the Antarctic weather also runs in cycles, where every 10 to 15 years an Antarctic winter is more intense than usual. Unfortunately for Scott, 1912 was one of those years.